Hey friends! My name is Antoinette Chanel and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I want to talk to you about Snark. What is Snark? You might have heard this word while walking around on the internet, or you might have wondered, why do internet users continue to comment that this is the community or the group that they belong to? You're just kind of like, what is this? What's this word all about? I mean, I think I know what it means, but what does it mean? Snark is a mix of sarcasm and wit, often combined with a sharpened edge. This is a way of making a point, sometimes very harshly, sometimes very humorously, about something or someone out in the world. It can be cutting, it can be ironic, it can even be mean. It can definitely be mean, but we'll get into that later. Examples of snark can be found everywhere, not just on the internet. So if you grew up with a church auntie that always had something to say about everyone, then you're probably familiar with snark. If you've been privy to those adult conversations as they're sitting around playing cards or having drinks or both, and they're usually just ripping on folks because it feels good and it almost feels like you shouldn't be listening to it. Again, you're familiar with snark. But toxic family histories aside, the most diverse collection of snark subjects as well as groups and communities can be found on the internet's front page, Reddit. Particularly, Reddit houses subreddits dedicated to blog snark, influencer snark, parent snark. This is where people can basically vent their frustrations about all of those topics very freely, without judgment, without being chin checked by anybody, because this is an open, welcoming space for that. And you know, it can be fun to trade frustrations, sarcasm, malice with like-minded individuals. You know, think echo chamber. More specific snark subreddits include a Taylor Swift snark subreddit, as well as a snark subreddit dedicated to LA influencers in particular. So not just influencers, but Los Angeles ones, particularly Los Angeles ones. And I even found a subreddit dedicated to snarking on Jordan Peterson. So there you go. Everybody gets the snark. And as I said before, snark can be playful or it can be biting. It really depends on the delivery, depends on a lot of nuanced factors in communication. But all of us recognize when snark is coming out as something that is kind of lighthearted and funny and we can joke about it versus, hey, I think this person is really insulting you, and hiding it as snark. Most snark communities are formed around shared interests. So if people are partaking in the same type of activities, or they're watching the same kinds of shows, listening to the same kinds of music, they might also then form their same types of gripes and complaints about those activities or things or pastimes. And in general, as the internet continues to mature, I think that what we are becoming more conscious of is that there are different categories of internet users. There are some people who interact with the There are some people who interact with the internet like it's no big deal. It's this thing that I do my stuff and then I leave and it's not that big of a deal. But then there are also people who interact on the internet and they are very critical. Commentary communities have popped up on YouTube as a result of this. It's a whole genre. It's part of why I'm here right now trying to get these coins. And so as such, the people who are frustrated with the way that social media feeds have been overly curated for far too long, along with the fact that most videos and footage that we see on social media that's shared by influencers or highly popular people, it just seems way too perfect, and people are tired of that because that's not what real life is reflecting. And so I think they assemble into these snark communities because it feels good to vent about that kind of stuff together, about how they're tired of seeing all of the Photoshop, and they're tired of seeing the perfect family vlogs, and they're tired of seeing, you know, vacation vids from people who they know for a fact don't work, stuff like that. And I've discussed Reddit already, but Discord, as well as Slack communities, as well as Facebook groups, those are all other platforms where these snark groups and communities can pop up, where people congregate around these things. Some popular ones on Facebook are the group called That's It, I'm Influencer Shaming, as well as some snarky Instagram and Twitter accounts, or X. And then of course, Discord and private Slack channels, any place that people can communicate. So, I mean, you could probably include WhatsApp in this too, and Telegram, and Zoom, 8x8, all of them. Reality television show Snark is also a really popular genre. So people who watch the same reality television often will have things to say about their favorite or least favorite characters. I've also seen mommy blogger Snark. So, you know, going after people who intentionally exploit their kids or, you know, intentionally mislead the public. It's very obvious in a lot of those cases when the people are doing that. I've seen Snark on them. Also, wellness and health influencers, those people who are like here to tell you how to get healthy, how to tell you how to burn all the weight and how to look 10 years younger and all of that. I've seen lots of Snark against those types of influencers too. A lot of the wellness Snark I see come through in criticism of multi-level marketing companies that sell health products, things like Body or Beach Body, whatever it's called now, but those types of MLMs. I see a lot of Snark against those. And as with anything, whenever you have people assembling together in groups, things can always start out with the best of intentions, but can turn toxic very easily. As I've also talked about in my video on parasocial relationships, when fandoms get assembled together and the frenzy just gets too hot, too electric, then all of a sudden you see lots of one-upmanship and, well, I'm a bigger fan than you and I've been here since day one and I'm a much more authentic fan and she likes me more than you. Like it's really ridiculous, but it's the same thing in Snark communities too. So, you know, the criticism, if someone decides that, well, I don't like your particular brand of criticism, or maybe I feel like you're trying to bite my style of criticism, then all of a sudden we have infighting within Snark communities, just like within any community. A lot of Snark communities are formed out of former fans who have somehow turned for some reason. So the Taylor Swift Snark subreddit in particular is filled with a lot of those people. They were huge fans of her, and then they decided that they didn't like how she was doing business. They didn't like the choices that she was making with her brand. They decided to break from the Swiftie crowd. And then they all sort of congregated together as former Swifties who were critical of her. And with fans who turned, maybe their fave isn't offering affordable live show tickets. Maybe their fave was pictured with someone who the fan community has deemed is not a cool person. They don't like them, you know, for whatever reasons. Maybe their fave said or did something that they didn't like. Once formed, these groups function as any sub-community would, with an agreed upon set of rules, moderators, leaders, etc. So this is where inside jokes and agreed upon language or jargon comes up. And because it's the internet, moments of virality and growth can also come from this. And people often join in Snark communities because participating in them can be fun. It's sort of like lolcow. If you aren't familiar with lolcow, it's basically a site where you can go on there anonymously and you can just talk a bunch of shit about people you know, stuff you can't say as yourself, but you can go on anonymously and say these things. You know, it's fun. There's something fun about being able to be unfiltered about other people in a public way. And as long as it stays lighthearted, then it's not dangerous. But as always, with anything, there's always going to be an extreme at some point, and people who get to extremism within Snark communities, those are the ones that you got to really watch out for. They're dangerous. But as far as the popularity of Snark communities, I sort of mentioned it a little bit at the beginning of this video in terms of the internet maturing and now people partaking in it and consuming of internet content in different ways. It doesn't just have to be this sort of one or even two-dimensional experience where, you know, you either liked it or you didn't. People are having very nuanced conversations about stuff that's happening all over the internet. It's become its own little beast, if you will. And with that comes the inevitable fatigue of the internet, especially when it comes to social media and that continuous feed that you can scroll on every app. It seems like people are sort of getting tired of being fed stuff or being told things that they know are not true, or just the lengths of deception that famous, rich, very well-connected and very privileged people go through to make people who are very average, who are just getting by, who don't have a lot, to make them part with their money in order to make this person so much richer. I think that there's also a population of internet users, you know, they're millennial aged, maybe a little bit older, definitely younger, because I see it from Gen Z. But people are just kind of burnt out on toxic positivity. I think the toxic positivity pendulum is swinging back in the other direction, and it's coming in the form of some pretty sharp backlash to it. People don't want to be told that everything's good and no worries and life is great and all that stuff anymore. We're seeing that no, there's real issues out here that can't be solved with just some kumbaya moments and feel good vibes. We need actual answers, and the people who we were trusting to give those to us, they either lied to us or they're nowhere to be found. There's a large portion of the population who is not media literate. So most of the advertisements, the propaganda, the proselytizing that comes at them through the media, they are not able to discern whether or not something is factual or if this is actually persuasive and trying to get them to act in a certain way. But that's not to say that there aren't smart people out here. And I think that critical thinking as it applies on the internet is only rising, which is another reason why we're seeing snark communities pop up everywhere in every single genre and subgenre you can think of. But in this way, it almost feels like snark communities are restoring a bit of the integrity that we lost when true journalism went out the window. Because the beauty of true journalism when we had it in the United States is that it allowed the citizens to be critical of politicians, of businesses, of millionaires, of public figures, of celebrities, of everybody. And if we can't be critical of these people, then how are we supposed to hold them accountable for the things that we need them to do on our behalf? The things that they get elected for, the things that they get paid for. How are we supposed to do that? I think the rise of snark communities and just the presence of snark sort of brings some of that back. It's not the same measure of accountability that muckraking journalism was, but it's a step in the right direction. That's all I've got on this topic, friends, but tell me, do you participate in any snark communities? Were you familiar with snark before you watched this video? Hopefully I was able to inform you of something, whether big or small, but I'd love to hear your thoughts down in those comments. If you want to keep up with me on Instagram, here's my handle here on screen. You can follow me there. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe so that you don't miss any of my future videos as I upload them, if you want to. But otherwise, my friends, thank you for sticking with me for another video. I'll be talking to you again soon, and take care.